So let's talk a little bit about how you got started with this idea for what ZocDoc has now become.
What happened was I was working as a management consultant, flying a lot, and I, at this time, had a really bad sinus infection, and I was flying across the country. Plane landed back in New York, and I ruptured my eardrum. I needed to find a doctor. I went to my insurance company's website and had a horrible experience. Half of the doctors in there, the information was inaccurate. Some of the doctors I called were no longer in network with my insurance. In one case, the doctor had died. Now, my father is a doctor, and I thought and knew from his medical practice that patients cancel their appointments a lot in the last minute. 25% of the appointments would be canceled in the last minute. And I thought that I should be able to connect as a patient with a doctor and do that quickly, but it took me 4 days to get access to a doctor's appointment.
So you have 4 days that you're going through this personal pain and all these things as a patient. You're thinking through how you could have made this idea better. Now take it to the next logical step, crafting what a service would look like. So how did you reverse engineer the problem into what the service offering would ultimately look like?
So what we did is not too dissimilar from some of the work I was doing when I was at McKinsey, actually, which is to say, look, let's just go in, make sure that we speak to a lot of our end users, talk to patients, talk to doctors. There's a lot of companies, I think, that start that sort of have a great idea and it sort of misses the mark because they fail to sort of validate what they're trying to do. And so in our case, the original idea, what we had at ZocDoc, 80% of it is what we originally thought, but 20% of it changed. And if we didn't have that 20% of change, the company wouldn't have succeeded. So we literally interviewed probably 100 different patients. And after every handful of patient interviews, we would just iterate on the idea over and over and over again. And probably the most interesting insight that we had was at one point, the original idea for ZocDoc was to enable patients to go out of network with doctors. The doctors would be more willing to give their available times. And we thought that you'd be able to book appointments that way. And what we realized is that patients really don't like going out of network. And we learned that from one interview in particular where there was a hedge fund guy who'd done quite well. And he was commenting that he was just afraid to go out of network because he was just afraid of all the paperwork. And we iterated on the idea and realized that we had to map people to insurances and let people know which doctors are in network with their insurance.
So at the end of the day, if you were to look at the entire spectrum of your research and this lean startup mentality, I guess it would be called now, of interviewing end users, what would you say the biggest thing you learned was during the process that ultimately made the foundation? What was the number one thing customers unanimously said, this is the issue I am out to solve?
It was very clear that access to healthcare was the biggest problem for people. And it was sort of amazing because, we've in every other industry that we've come to use, every service industry, understanding that you, of course, are able to book your restaurants online, book your travel online, not being able to book a doctor. When you need a doctor, it's the most important thing for you. And so we through that process, confirmed that, yes, if we made ZocDoc and we got the doctors there, people would book appointments. And that was the most important thing to know. We knew that with so much conviction that in the early years where there was so much pushback and it was really slow coming in terms of the number of doctors we had and the marketplace wasn't as large as it is now, we were able to have the ability to keep pushing forward.
For entrepreneurs out there today that are looking to tackle a new market or sort of stumble on the same thesis you did, which is I'm going through this personal pain, this pain point I need to solve, I think there's a business here, what steps would you tell them, an action plan if you will, to say, okay, this is how you can go about validating whether this thesis holds water for a business?
I think the first thing is you need to make sure that you're validating your idea with people who are going to be honest with you. Oftentimes, if you speak to a friend and you sort of talk to them about an idea, because they're your friend, they have a lot of affinity towards you, they're going to give you a lot of positive reinforcement, but it may not be the right thing. Like, you want to know if the idea is bad, you want to know that as quickly as possible. And so the people that you talk to about it should be people you don't know. So, walk into Starbucks, start up a conversation with someone, or speak to your friends, ask them to introduce you to their friends who you don't know, and have those conversations and talk to them about what they think is super important. Making sure you get the right level of feedback, I think, is super critical.